undiagnosed and therefore untreated mental illness. So what is Shakespeare trying to say about mental illness? The deterioration of mind due to undiagnosed and therefore untreated mental illness causes harm to others and self. The progression of mental illness that plagued the Macbeths causes them to commit atrocities and lead themselves to their own deaths. The main points are going to be defining deterioration of the mind as mental illnesses and going through the symptoms that the characters show of mental illness and the detrimental effects of said mental illnesses on the characters and their actions. So mental illness refers to a wide range of mental health conditions, such as like disorders that affect your mood, thinking, and behavior. Many people have mental health concerns from time to time, but a mental health concern becomes a mental illness when ongoing signs and symptoms cause frequent stress and affect your ability to function. In most cases, symptoms can be managed with a combination of medication and talk therapy, things not present in Macbeth's time, which is in like the 1500s, like Shakespeare's time. Mental illness symptoms can affect emotion, thoughts, and behaviors, causing one to be at risk of harming others and/or self. So, deterioration is defined as progressively worsening, and mental illness, which, when untreated, worsens with time, therefore having such a negative effect on the mind. So, the characters who portray symptoms of mental illness, the ones that I'm going to go through are Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. So, Macbeth shows symptoms of antisocial personality disorder, anxiety, and depression. So I'm going to go through the stuff in that order. So antisocial personality disorder, it describes an individual who shows patterns of manipulation and violence towards others, which is something that Macbeth shows if you read the play. It is a chronic mental disorder with abnormal or violent social behavior. So I'm only going to symptoms that they show, so I'm not going through stuff that they don't show. So anyway, the first symptom is persistent deceit to exploit others. So in Act 2, Scene 3, Macbeth asks Banquo, "Write you this afternoon, and is it far you ride?" So because later in the scene, Macbeth uses this info to convince murderers to kill Banquo. So he basically lies to Banquo when he asks him where he's going, but his intention is to use this information to instruct killers to kill Banquo and his son. The next symptom is using wit to manipulate others for personal gain. So in Act 3, Scene 1, the direct quotation that Macbeth uses when he's deceiving the murderers that kill Banquo, as mentioned in the previous example, that it was he in times past which held you so under a fortune which you thought had been our innocent self. And are you so gospelled to pray for this good man and his issue, whose heavy hand hath bowed you to the grave and beggared yours forever? Which basically means he's saying that Banquo is the cause of these random people's poverty and suffering. And if you read the play, this is what Lady Macbeth does to him in an earlier act and scene, which I will go through. Wait, no, I haven't added this to my slides. I'm not gonna go through that. But yeah, she does that to him, so he kind of imitates what she does by feeding their rage and trying to justify the murder, thus convincing them to commit sin. So the next symptom is impulsiveness or failure to plan ahead, which Macbeth does a lot in later scenes, but like the earlier scene that he does this is Act 2, Scene 3, where he oversteps his wife's plan. So, what? Blah. So in Act 1, Scene 7, Lady Macbeth instructs him on how to go through like the murder of King Duncan. So at that point, she tells him what to do, but when he panics later on, he kills the guards of Duncan's chambers after Duncan's death was discovered. This can be proven to be impulsive, but how it was not part of Lady Macbeth's plan, as it wasn't addressed when she instructed him. And if it was Macbeth's plan to kill them as a show of fury, he would have done so when he saw Duncan's lifeless corpse with like the other people, and not when he's alone, so that he can prove that he did this out of rage. So later, more like common examples of him being impulsive are from Act 4, Scene 1, where he says, "The very firstlings of my heart shall be the firstlings of my hand," which is when he decides he's just gonna like straight up kill people because doesn't want to think anymore. This line shows Macbeth's active decision to act without thinking, making it both an impulsive decision and a decision to be impulsive. In Act 5, Scene 3, Macbeth says, "Bring me no more reports, let them fly all." This is in the middle of war, like he just decides he doesn't want to hear anymore about it because it stresses him. So this is a reckless decision that means he would not know about sudden changes on the battlefield and would not be able to react accordingly. The next symptom is a disregard for right and wrong. So in Act 3, Scene 4, Macbeth acknowledges his sins, saying that "I am in bad steps in so far that should I wait no more, returning were as tedious as go o'er." So using blood as a metaphor, using blood as a metaphor to represent his sins, he mentions that he acknowledges that he is like drowning in sins, like he has committed a lot of bad deeds and shit, but he doesn't want to return to being good because it's the same as going over and being worse. So in this manner, he disregards right and wrong. In Act 4, Scene 1, he says, "Then live Macbeth." Blah. No, wait, let me do that. In Act 4, Scene 1, he says, "Then live Macduff, what need I fear of thee? But yet I'll make assurance double sure and take a bond of fate." So at this point, he realizes that he doesn't have actual justification to murder Macduff, and he decides that he's just gonna do it anyway, because like, why not? So that's also disregard for right and wrong. So another symptom would be recurring problems with the law, including criminal behavior. So like the laws of their time are kind of different, but like murder's still always illegal, so we're just gonna go with that. Throughout the play, Macbeth is responsible for a series of murders, the first being Duncan, which was regicide and thus also treason. Regicide referring to the murder of a king, which is his king, so that's treason. The second being Banquo, and the third being the entirety of those who reside within Macduff's castle. Those were not done directly by him, but masterminding a murder is also a crime, so. He also planned to have Fleance killed. Fleance is Banquo's son, but that didn't work out, but like, attempted murder is still a crime. So, the next symptom is a lack of empathy for others and a lack of remorse about harming others. So, after Macbeth decides that the castle of Macduff I will surprise, the only other time this mass murder is brought up is when Macduff hears the news himself. Macbeth shows no reaction to it, unlike when he killed Duncan and he hallucinated a voice that told him Macbeth shall sleep no more, and when he killed Banquo and he hallucinated Banquo's ghost coming for him, this implies that Macbeth no longer regrets murder of innocents, even though this last one was worse than the previous two in the sense that he killed more innocent and vulnerable people. The next symptom being failure to consider the negative consequences of behavior or learn from them. So, though Macbeth himself admits his sins to be evil, he fails to learn from his wrongdoing, repeating murders. Before murdering Duncan, Macbeth praises him having borne faculties so meek and having been so clear in his great office. He consciously admits that for these reasons, in addition to being Duncan's host who should, against his murderers, shut the door, not bear the knife himself, and being Duncan's kinsman and subject, which means he's like Duncan's relative and servant. So not really servant, but he serves the king and shit. So he admits that for these things, all the more it is wrong for him to kill Duncan, but he goes ahead with the murder anyways. So subconsciously that was his conscious admitting that this was wrong. Subconsciously he also admits this because when he murders Duncan, he hallucinates out of fear and paranoia. Later, when killing Banquo, rather than convincing himself not to kill Banquo, as he did in the soliloquy before he murdered Duncan, he convinces himself to kill Banquo. He says that his fears in Banquo sink deep because, I don't know, he's trying to convince himself to kill Banquo. So that is first a show of how this progressively gets worse. I forgot to say at the start to take note of the acts and the scenes, because it progressively gets worse, which was my point about the deterioration of the mind. Okay, anyways, so he gets worse because instead of convincing himself not to commit murder, he's convincing himself to commit murder. He's convincing himself to get people to kill somebody he once considered a friend. So, but he still hallucinates over it. So subconsciously, there's still this sense of admitting that he was wrong, that he was afraid to do this bad deed. But later on, when he kills those of Macduff's castle, he doesn't think of it again. He just has them killed because it was the first thought that he had, and he just wanted to go ahead with it. So this shows that his failure to consider the negative consequences of his behavior and thus learn from them, because he didn't learn from the hallucinations and stuff he didn't learn that he did wrong from his past murders, and he continued committing them until they didn't matter anymore. So the next symptom is hostility and significant irritability, agitation, aggression, or violence. So in Act 4, Scene 1, Macbeth says, "Deny me this, and an eternal curse fall on you." So at this point, he's talking to the witches, and his desire to find out more about his future has put him on edge. So instead of approaching the witches who possess this ability to help him with a calm demeanor, he makes threatening demands, which is not very safe, but Macbeth is dumb. Macbeth also repeatedly lashes out at Satan for no apparent reason in Act 5, Scene 3. I don't have the full quotation, but I just quote the actual insults. So he calls him a cream-faced loon, which is referencing the pale face that you normally associate fear with, and loon being idiot or something. Or was it crazy? Okay, something like that. Goose look meaning stupid look, I think. Geese villain, which is when Satan reports to him that there are great numbers coming or something, and then he talks like a math teacher when you don't put units behind your numbers. And then he also calls him a lily-livered boy and whey-face, which I don't really remember what they mean, but basically they're insults. So poor or abusive relationships are also a symptom. And I was going to make a separate slide for this, but then I got lazy and forgot about it. But basically, the abusive relationship that he endures is his relationship with Lady Macbeth. In the scene where she's convincing him to commit murder, she gaslights him and she questions his masculinity, which is something that's clearly important to him. She uses it against him and twists it into a motivation to murder the king. So yeah, she manipulated him emotionally, which is a sign of an abusive relationship. But I don't have the quotations because I got lazy with this part. Anyways, that was all for antisocial personality disorder in Macbeth. So next is anxiety disorder in Macbeth. So an anxiety disorder is experiencing occasional anxiety is normal part of life. However, people with anxiety disorders frequently have intense, excessive, and persistent worry and fear about everyday situations. These feelings interfere with daily activities, are difficult to control, out of proportion to the actual danger, and can last a long time. So, the first symptom being having a sense of impending danger, panic, or doom. So, in Act 3, Scene 1, Macbeth says to himself in his soliloquy, where he convinces himself to kill Banquo, which was referenced earlier as well. Our fears in Banquo stick deep, and in his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. So Macbeth begins to fear his inferiority to Banquo, claiming his genius rebuked as it is said Mark Antony's was by Caesar when compared to Banquo. Banquo was named father to a line of kings, while a fruitless crown and a barren scepter was given to Macbeth. Although Macbeth saw these crowns, although Macbeth saw these, although at the start when Macbeth first received these prophecies, he was engrossed in like receiving such great titles and stuff, but then at this point he starts overthinking and panicking, and he turns it into something bad, and when he compares it to Banquo and lets his like inferiority complex get the better of him, and it starts getting obsessive and he ends up killing Banquo. So that's why it's considered bad and like a symptom of mental illness. His thoughts progress from a fear of Banquo to a jealousy, feeling so greatly inferior to Banquo that his own act of murder to gain power appeared to him as, "For Banquo's issue have I filed my mind, for them the gracious Duncan have I murdered, put rancors in the vessel of my peace only for them." So this quotation means that he feels at this point that it was for Banquo's sake that he's now plagued with paranoia because he murdered Duncan, even though Duncan was such a great person. So he thinks it was for Banquo and his whole family. Rancors in the vessel of my peace only for them was like, he has ruined his own peace of mind, and he's now tortured by his own anxiety and fears, and he's blaming this on Banquo. This thought process shows Macbeth's panicking subconscious linking a simple fear of getting found out for like literally doing wrong shit to a loss sustained by his very soul and descendants. He links a fear to something far greater than it is. So it shows him like having his sense of impending danger from what Banquo could do to him starts getting like obsessive and way bigger than it really is. So the next symptom is feeling nervous, restless, or tense. So in Act 3, Scene 1, Macbeth says, "To be thus is nothing but to be safely thus." This implies Macbeth feeling unsafe despite having obtained the throne. He acts unreasonably upon his unfounded fears in Banquo and convinces people to murder Banquo for him. In Act 3, Scene 2, he says, "Oh, full of scorpions is my mind, dear wife." This shows Macbeth's internal torment as that a poisonous creature resides within his thoughts. So, again, since I forgot to mention to take notes of the acts and scenes, basically there is a progression of the scenes. Most of the symptoms of actually this is in my conclusion too, but anyways, most of the symptoms of his illnesses can be categorized according to act and scene. It just keeps adding on as the play goes on, which also returns back to the question of deterioration of mind. So the next symptom of an anxiety disorder that Macbeth has is having difficulty controlling worry. So this was explained in the other two symptoms as well, but there's more. So in Act 4, Scene 1, Macbeth says, "But yet I'll make assurance double sure." So this is at the point where he decides that he doesn't really need to kill Macduff, but he decides he wants to ruin stuff anyway, because he wants to be extra sure, because he doesn't want to be afraid anymore. So this goes along with the previous example of Macbeth killing Banquo because he was paranoid. It shows that Macbeth choosing to kill people in an obsessive attempt to avoid those that evoke fear in him, because he's afraid that Macduff will come for him to kill him after all he has gone through to get the throne. He's afraid that Banquo would steal the throne from him after all he has gone through to get the throne. So he just gets afraid and he gets obsessive over it, and he decides he wants to kill them. He wants to kill the people related to them. His inability to control these worries lead them to grow into ever greater paranoia, which he sees murder as the only escape from. So, yeah. The next symptom is having trouble sleeping, which is repeatedly shown throughout the play of Macbeth. So in Act 3, Scene 2, "Sleep in affliction of these terrible dreams that shake us nightly." So Macbeth discusses with his wife the troubles his paranoia has been causing him, stating nightmares is one of them. Not just nightmares, but nightmares that affect his sleep, that make it difficult for him to sleep in peace because he's too afraid at night. In Act 3, Scene 2, Macbeth also says that life is like a fitful fever. It shows him tiring of life. He feels that living is merely meaningless outbursts of energy, which is what fitful means. I think that's what it says in my glossary for the book. Anyways, that's what he sees life as right now, because he's just so tired of everything. So in contrast to this, Macbeth feels like Duncan, when he kills King Duncan, as mentioned earlier, he has sent him to peace. This is the first point that Macbeth romanticizes death. So, yeah. So that's the end of Macbeth's anxiety disorder. So, next is Macbeth's depressive disorder. Depression is a mood disorder that causes a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest. It affects how you feel, think, and behave, and can lead to a variety of emotional and physical problems. You may have trouble doing normal day-to-day activities, and sometimes you may feel as if life isn't worth living. So for the first symptom, uh, it's overwhelming feelings of sadness, emptiness, and hopelessness. So as I mentioned earlier, the symptoms can be categorized according to act and scene. So depression, I mostly put the disorders in order of which one came first. So depression is last, so they're all around Act 5. So anyway, the first one in Act 5, Scene 3, Macbeth says, I have lived long enough. My way of life is fallen into the sear, the yellow leaf. So at this point, he has had enough of life. He feels like a yellow leaf, which is a dying leaf. He feels like he's dying, even though he's not. So like dying inside, but in Macbeth words. And in Act 5, Scene 5, oh my god, my text is cut off. Okay, wait, no, shit. In Act 5, Scene 5, Macbeth Macbeth, when he hears the news of Lady Macbeth having died, highly implied to have been a suicide, he says, she should have died hereafter, there would have been time for such a word. Macbeth, who once saw Lady Macbeth as his dearest partner of greatness, an equal, this is a great amount of respect considering the times that they lived in. He's now so emotionally drained that he finds himself unable to shed a tear for her. He doesn't have time to mourn her loss. He doesn't have time to be upset because he's stressed about the war. He's just so empty and stressed over that he can't be upset over her death and implied suicide. In Act 5, Scene 5, he says, this like part of that speech is like kind of famous, but anyways, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in on this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. So he finds the days that make up life trivial as they repeat until death for him whose sickness plagues his mind daily and who has no idea how to seek help for such problems of the mind. So to him, everything is just the same every day because he doesn't know how to deal with these problems that he has. And it just feels so empty and meaningless to him and shit. Yeah. So the wait. Yes. So the next symptom is feelings of worthlessness or guilt fixating on past failures or self-blame. So in Act 5, Scene 3, Macbeth says, that which should accompany old age as honor, love, obedience, troops of friends, I must not look to have, but in their stead curses, not loud but deep, mouth honor. So he acknowledges that he won't deserve praise or love, and he just accepts the quiet curses that he receives. His acceptance towards this, like his passiveness, he doesn't react to it. He just knows that he deserves it and he just lets it happen. It shows his feelings of hopelessness towards the situation when it's not a hopeless situation and he could have done something for this, but he just fixates on how he did wrong and he won't fix it. So the next symptom is frequent recurring thoughts of death, suicidal thoughts, suicidal attempts, or suicide. So in Act 5, Scene 5, he states, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out to breathe candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So, as mentioned in the first romanticizing of death, in Act 3, Scene 2, he describes it as peaceful, which is right after he murders Duncan. So this is like quite a while later in Act 5, Scene 5. And since then, his description of death has become much longer, and the meanings of life and death towards him have changed. Before, life was meaningless and just waste of energy, and death was peaceful. But to him now, life is meaningless. You just waste your time, and death is like death is just the end of it. It's not peaceful. It's just the end of his wasting time and shit. So though the play only shows these two instances of Macbeth's suicidal thoughts, it can be inferred that between these two lines he has continually thought about these things, thus leading to the change in his expression of them. Because at the start it was just short lines and he just describes it a little bit, but now he has like a whole paragraph of words for it, and the meanings have changed to him. So it shows that he kept thinking about it. So a repetition of symptoms would be the angry outbursts and irritability over small matters covered previously on the symptoms of antisocial personality disorder are also a symptom of depression. Sleep disturbances, including insomnia, covered previously on the symptoms of anxiety, are also a symptom of depression. Anxiety, the emotion, not the disorder, can also be a symptom of depression. But if you go through the disorder, and you obviously feel the emotion too, so yeah. So the effect of this is that at the start of the play, Macbeth is a noble, brave, loyal, and strong soldier that commands so much respect. He's praised as Valor's minion, valiant cousin, worthy gentleman, and Bellona's bridegroom, even in his absence. As the story progresses, Macbeth's symptoms of mental illness increase, the symptoms being able to be categorized by act and scene. Together with this increasingly damaged mental health, Macbeth's mind falls apart and he resorts to murder and tyranny to ease himself, both of which fail to help. Macbeth, not feeling remorse, as previously stated in symptoms of antisocial personality disorder, does nothing to improve the country's situation and is eventually bested in battle by Macduff and killed during the revolt. So, wait. So, oh my god. Alright, never mind. So, next is Lady Macbeth's issues. So, I'm going through it in order of the story's progression again to show deterioration of the mind. So, the first one is actually unclear, which I will describe later. It's one or more unclear possible mental illnesses. The second one is post-traumatic stress disorder, which manifests in the form of anxiety, which induces depression later on. So I'm just gonna explain that later. So while there's less evidence for Lady Macbeth's mental illnesses from before the point of Duncan's murder, it is likely that she did have a mental illness. Her immediate reaction to Macbeth's news that he would be king was to murder the current king, and her greatest worry was Macbeth's kindness preventing him from doing so, and unusually cruel judgment. Her evocation of spirits that tend on mortal thoughts to unsex her implies that she did have sweeter qualities that had to be removed for this murder to take place, similarly to her opinion of Macbeth. Her fixation on the murder of Duncan, despite Macbeth having already been promised kingship, is abnormal and implies an unknown mental illness. The difference between Lady Macbeth's depression and Macbeth's depression is Lady Macbeth is caused by an implied pre-existing anxiety disorder caused by post-traumatic stress disorder. So, before the murder of King Duncan, Lady Macbeth is portrayed as intimidating and strong-willed. However, after the betrayal, Lady Macbeth begins to grow anxious, paranoid of being exposed as a murderer, much like Macbeth. So, Macbeth's anxiety worsens his mental state and causes him to kill more people. Lady Macbeth's worries are the beginning of her mental health downward spiral. Yeah, so it worsens for Macbeth. it worsens existing problems. But for Lady Macbeth, it starts getting like shit. I don't know why I said that. Never mind. From this, it can be inferred that her anxiety disorder was a form of post-traumatic stress disorder caused by the burden that she masterminded Duncan's murder. So I'm not gonna go through the symptoms part by part like Macbeth, because Lady Macbeth has significantly less lines than Macbeth, being a supporting character as contrasted to Macbeth, who's the main character. So in Act 3, Scene 2, she says, "Knots had all spent." This line implies Lady Macbeth's tiring of her fears. She feels she has gained nothing after exhausting herself over the matter of killing Duncan for the throne. The extent to which this is true is revealed in her line, which is in the same act and scene. "'Tis safer to be that which we destroy than by destruction dwell in doubtful joy," which shows that she would rather be dead than suffer this stress and fear. So this shows that Lady Macbeth's anxieties are directly caused by her guilt over the murder of Duncan. So the beginnings of her anxiety soon progress, plaguing her mind so much that it disturbs her sleep. She sleepwalks, her eyes open but their senses shut, holding the light that she commanded to have by her side at all times. This contrasts her line in Act 1, Scene 5, where she says, "Come thick night," when she summons darkness to aid her in a murder, showing once again how deeply affected by the murder she is. Lady Macbeth then scrubs at her hands repeatedly, rubbing out a spot that does not exist, crying, "Here's the blood, blah. Here's the smell of blood still. All the perfumes of Arabia will not sweeten this little hand." This shows her paranoia over her part in Duncan's murder, controlling her on a subconscious level. Like, even when she's unconscious, she can't sleep correctly. She's just thinking about what she did to Duncan. So this persistent feeling of helplessness in guilt and sleep disruptions are symptoms that overlap with depression, which shows the anxiety-induced depression once again. So the effect of this is that as a result of the unknown mental health implications, Lady Macbeth felt a necessity to murder kind-hearted King Duncan, who had resembled her father as he slept. This fear of being discovered grows into an anxiety disorder which plagues the mind to the point of disrupting sleep, a way in which a post-traumatic stress disorder can manifest in people, followed by a depressive disorder induced by this, which drives her to take her own life towards the end of the play. In conclusion, Shakespeare writes the play from the antagonist's point of view, as Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are written to be considered evil and they are defeated in the end. It presents their mental illnesses as personality traits when Macduff and other characters call them fiends, showing that the mental illness is a direct relation to the resulting chaos and evil that they cause. This mimics how mental illnesses are often undiagnosed in Shakespeare's time, thus leaving their diseases of the mind which have direct relation to their actions harmful to both others and oneself untreated. Okay, done. Y'all have like questions and shit because I didn't check the chat a lot while I was reading out all of that. I don't even know if I was audible the whole time. Was I audible the whole time? Like, could y'all hear shit? Cool. Like, question. Bruh, right. I don't know how to... But I do know how to do dishes. But anyways, I don't know how to teach shit. Dude, just Google. Do you mean like going through the implied effect it had, the implied effect it shows on Lady Macbeth's mental state, or do you mean like the effect of what she did to Macbeth's mental state? So the specific, okay, wait, let me just get the quotations. Watch me spend forever trying to hunt down the quotations because I was lazy as fuck and I didn't find them earlier. Okay, so I did like beforehand research for the rest of this. So like if I miss out something in Lady Macbeth, it's probably because I'm doing this on the fly on with no preparation. Yes. Anyways, so from the start, Macbeth, when going through the soliloquy in Act 1.1, in Act 1, Scene 7, he says he praises Duncan and he goes through the moral reasons why this is wrong and the emotional reasons that he should be good to Duncan, and he praises Duncan and stuff. So in this you can see that Macbeth has a moral compass. He understands the difference between right and wrong, although he disregards it later on as previously mentioned. But anyways, however, when Lady Macbeth enters, his words are cut off. See, the last line that he says before Lady Macbeth enters is, "I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition which overleaps itself and falls on the other." And then there's a dash, which is in the script. But anyways, it should be, if it's acted out, they'll probably say it in a way that it cuts off, because his line is cut off by Lady Macbeth's entrance, which shows like a sort of fear of Lady Macbeth's reactions to his morals. He, as if he like knows that Lady Macbeth is against him having some sense of being nice and shit. Also, when Lady Macbeth, when he went through the shit on his own, it was about being good and bad. But when he talks to Lady Macbeth, when he's trying to tell her not to kill Duncan, he gives her material reasons. He says that Duncan has honored him and he doesn't want to throw away the good opinions of people right now because he just received them after returning victorious in war. So this already shows that Macbeth knows Lady Macbeth is going to react to this badly. So she probably has pre-existing record of this sort of manipulation towards him. But anyways, that's what he says first. So next she goes, her immediate reaction, she doesn't ask why his mind is changed. She immediately starts criticizing him. She says, "Was the hope drunk wherein you dressed yourself? Has it slept since? And it wakes now to look so green and pale at what it did so freely." So at this point, she just starts questioning him like a lot. Like it's in a critical tone. So like, how do I say this? My brain is dying because I'm doing this without preparation. So basically, at this point, she just Wait, what do you... Wait. Brain slow, hold up. Okay, wait, so immediately she just questions his decision. She isn't trying to accept it at all. She's criticizing it in a way that's critical and implies that she's trying to convince him to change his mind through these questions. She goes, "From this time, such I account thy love," which is like kind of gaslighting. Not gonna lie, she like... Wait, let me finish this. I'm gonna go through that later. I really think he's that ambitious. You know what? I'll go through that later. Remind me when I'm done with talking about Lady Macbeth's shit. Okay, so so at this point she says, "From this time such I account thy love." She says that Macbeth decides that he doesn't want to murder the king, which is a perfectly reasonable decision. He even gives her some like examples, and she says that this is how she will regard his love from now on. She says that she links his breaking of this shared decision to murder the king. She links it to his love for her, as if like his love for her has anything to do with murdering the king. So like this is guilt trip. Wait, no, it was guilt tripping. It wasn't. Oh my god. Okay, wait, never mind. It was guilt tripping because she's trying to push the blame onto him. As if he's in the wrong for not... Yeah, because she's trying to make it seem as if he's in the wrong for not wanting to kill the king. She links it to his love for her, which is clearly important to them, as he referred to her as dearest partner of greatness, and he details like a whole ass letter about this shit to her, even though he doesn't really have to, because it's a patriarchal society and males are superior to females. But he sees her as an equal despite this. So clearly she's important to him, but she puts down his love, saying that him breaking this decision to kill King Duncan is linked to the way she treats him, he treats her, implying that she can't trust him because of she doesn't want to because he doesn't want to kill the king. Okay, guilt trip. Okay, then yes, she questions his masculinity, which was that one gaslighting or guilt tripping? Okay, it was one of that emotional manipulation thing. Oh my god, my brain is so scattered. Why is my brain like this? Okay, wait, so she says, "Wouldst thou have that which thou esteemest the ornament of life, and live a coward in thine own esteem? Letting I dare not wait upon I would, like the poor cat in the adage." So yeah, I just said the coward line. So basically, she says that she questions his bravery. She says that he doesn't have the courage to take what he wants, when this is straight up murder and illegal. But anyways, she calls it his cowardice, and he says to counter this, Macbeth says, "I dare do all that may become a man. Who dares do more is none." So he says that he will do all that makes him a man, which is to be brave and all. But to do more than that, to overstep the boundaries of a mortal and end the life of another, he will not do. So Then Lady Macbeth challenges this belief and says, "What beast was it then that made you break this enterprise to me?" So she questions his motives for like the things he does. Instead of directly answering his argument, she drags the argument off point and brings it back to Macbeth's personalities. I went through that earlier about the demons ridding her of her feminine qualities. Come you Come you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts and unsex me here. Anyways, so she says, when you does do it, then you were a man, and to be more than you were, you would be so much more the man. So she twists his ideology of being a man. She says that to do more is to overstep this boundary of a mortal man. She says that it would make him greater rather than the sinner that he would become in terms of murder and regicide and treason and all that. So she twists his beliefs, which is manipulation. She guilt tripped him earlier and shit. There's evidence of her previously doing this. She also gaslights him and shit. So yeah, basically Lady Macbeth is abusive, but I still low-key stand her. She kinda cool. Yeah, wait, there's more, because she talks a lot. Why do they talk so much? Okay, so, for an example, for her point, which is completely off point compared to Macbeth's point, because she doesn't like to listen to logical reasoning, she just likes to twist everything into her own words and control Macbeth. So she says, I have given suck, and I know how tender it is to love the babe that milks me. I would, while it was smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from its boneless gums and dashed the brains out, had I so sworn as you have done to this. So basically, she says that she has breastfed babies before, and she knows how like sweet it is, cause like, oh yeah, guess what? When you breastfeed, you release oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone, which makes you really emotionally attached to your child or whoever the fuck you're breastfeeding. So yeah, happy hormone, yay. But then she decides that if she had sworn to Macbeth to do this the way Macbeth had sworn to her, which Macbeth never actually swore to do this, she just said that you should do it. He was like, okay. But anyways, she says she makes up this idea in her head that Macbeth has sworn this to her. She says that if she had done this for Macbeth, she would have smashed that baby's head onto the fucking wall and like literally like, yeah, this is a bit violent. Anyways, so she says she would do that. So this is guilt tripping again because her point is already off, but she still tries to give an example to force it even further that he's in the wrong for betraying her trust rather than for wanting to, not commit a crime and shit. And then at this point, Macbeth is just too scared to like straight up say no anymore. So he just goes, "If we should fail," which is like a really short line. It doesn't challenge her anymore because it shows that he shows his defeat in this because Lady Macbeth doesn't fucking listen to him. Her argument was way off whatever the hell he said and shit. So yes. Anyway, he just gives up. He can't fight her because that's how Lady Macbeth is. She only cares about her own point. She doesn't care. She doesn't listen to him. She just wants to control him. So at this point, his lines are very short because he's just giving in to her because he doesn't really have a choice. And at this point, she's still angry at him, so she doesn't want to give in even though he's giving in. So she goes, "We fail, but screw your courage to the sticking place and we'll not fail." So instead of going straight to the instruction for killing Duncan, which is what she goes on to say afterwards, she adds in an extra line to put down his courage once again, which is clearly something important to him, which is something that he argued back about previously. She puts it down on purpose before going on to talk about instructing him on killing Duncan. So this again shows her intention in guilt tripping Macbeth and controlling him. Alright, so now about Macbeth's ambition. Honestly, this he only says ambition like one point in the play, which is Act 1, Scene 7, when he's having the soliloquy about not murdering Duncan. So he says, "I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition which overleaps itself and falls on the other," which I mentioned earlier for separate reasons, but now we'll take note of the specific wording. So he says that he has no spur, which means he has no reason, no trigger to go ahead and kill someone as great and fantastic as Duncan, because he just went through this long paragraph about how fantastic Duncan is. If my voice is sounding weird, I did not drink a lot of water today. I'm starting to have a sore throat after talking this much. Anyways, he has no trigger to hurt someone as nice as Duncan. He just goes through all of that. I'm not gonna read the whole quote. So he has no spur to do this, but only vaulting ambition which overleaps itself and falls on the other. So his ambition is vaulting. It keeps going up. It keeps increasing. And he says this is his only reason to murder Duncan. And he decides that this isn't good enough, which is why he tries to convince Lady Macbeth later. But anyway, it doesn't work out, so. In this, you can see that he doesn't actually have a lot of ambition because he chooses his morals over his ambition. He chooses not to kill Duncan. He only kills it because he kills Duncan later because Lady Macbeth decides she wants to be a bitch. Yeah, and then she manipulates him into it. But besides this one line in Act 1, Scene 7, he doesn't actually bring up ambition again. So it doesn't really show that he's a particularly ambitious character. He even chooses his morals over his ambition. But I don't know why people seem to call him the result of overleaping ambition, but like whatever. He only says it like once. I don't think he's an ambitious character. He doesn't even choose his ambition. Okay. Did I even answer the question? Let me go check the question. Wait. Afraid to take the crown. Okay, so he's not exactly afraid to take the crown for himself. He knows that it's wrong, and like, even though there were reasons that he wanted to do it, as previously stated, the moment he heard the prophecy, he was all like, "These thoughts that doth unfix my hair and make my seated heart knock against knock at my ribs against the use of nature," something like that. I didn't memorize the whole quote exactly, but close enough. So at that point, he says that, which means that it makes his hair stand on end, which is the way you describe fear, and his seated heart knock at his rib against the use of nature, which is when his heartbeat is increasing to an unnatural pace. So at this point, you can infer that he is having his first thought of murdering Duncan in this play. So yeah, but like he doesn't ever actually mention that he's ambitious until that one soliloquy in Act Act 1, Scene 7. So yeah, again, I don't think he's an ambitious character, but he's not afraid to take the throne. He just doesn't have reason to. He says that in I have no spur to break the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition. And that line which I said like a bunch of times. So he doesn't actually have reason. He doesn't actually have reason to kill Duncan to him, because Duncan's a great fella and he's literally related to Duncan. He serves Duncan as Duncan is his king and all that shit. And also Duncan was a really fucking great king and that shit. So he doesn't really have reason to kill Duncan. He just wants the throne. That's his only reason. So it's not that he's afraid to take the throne for himself. Duncan do be a nice guy. Oh, my teacher did a speech about how Lamau. My teacher did a speech about how Duncan low-key a dumbass because his role in the character is bleh. His role as a character in the play is to not know anything. His role in the play is literally to be an idiot. Like, because in the scenes that he does appear, he's always asking questions for the people around him. He's dependent on them overly, and he's always asking questions. But form reinforces point. So the actual point is where he just goes on and trusts. Okay, I forgot what the actual point was. Never mind. I only remember the forms. I only remember the ways in which they symbolize Duncan's dumbassery, but I remember the actual quotations. Fuck. Sore throat. Wait, if I could just... Yeah, sure. Let's listen to Macbeth. We stand Shakespeare.
Right. This is my essay for this one. It's about the influence
I'm
of Lady
realizing
Macbeth.
right now that my earphones don't actually work and I can't hear shit.
Yeah, actually. Oh. So the title is The Influence of Lady Macbeth on Macbeth. Okay. As one may know, there are different ways to convince people to do
Oh
something,
fuck
such
this
as
shit. Why is my
taunting,
audio like
flattering,
this?
or even guilt-tripping. Lady Macbeth of William Shakespeare's Macbeth is a prime example of taunting someone into doing her dirty work for her. She desperately wants King Duncan dead, so she taunts Macbeth into killing King Duncan for her by taking advantage of his lack of ambition and calling him a coward for his lack of ambition, and by attacking Macbeth's masculinity. When Macbeth comes to Lady Macbeth saying that he cannot kill Duncan, her first move is to attack his ambition, more specifically his lack thereof. Macbeth does not
Bro,
want to
I
kill
cannot hear shit.
Duncan.
This is so sad.
Macbeth does not want to kill Duncan because he just received praise from the king as well as golden opinions from all sorts of people. End quote. Shakespeare, Act 1, Scene 7, line 32. But Lady Macbeth just taunts him, asking him if he is afeard to be same in thine own act and valor as thou art in desire. Act 1, Scene 7, line 39 to 41. In other words, she asked him if he is afraid to kill Duncan. Obviously, Macbeth really does not want to kill Duncan, but Lady Macbeth forces it onto him by basically daring him to murder King Duncan. She does this by asking Macbeth if he would live a coward in thine own esteem, like the poor Carthage. Act 1, Scene 7, line 42 to 44. Here, Lady Macbeth asks Macbeth if he is willing to be seen as a coward and basically tells him that he's like a cat who wants a fish but is afraid to get its feet wet because he does not want Duncan's crown, because he does want Duncan's crown, but he's too afraid to do anything to get it. Lady Macbeth basically takes advantage of Macbeth's weak ambition and abuses it in order to convince him to go toward murdering Duncan by hurting his ego. Alongside his lack of ambition, Lady Macbeth also attacks his masculinity. Lady Macbeth clearly says that when Macbeth does do it, then Macbeth was a man. End quote. Act 1, Scene 7, line 49. Saying that if he were to murder Duncan, then he would automatically be a man. Lady Macbeth also mocks him, saying that they have made themselves and that their fitness now does unmake you. Act 1, Scene 7, line 83 to 84. In other words, just as everything falls into place, Macbeth backs from the task down because he is too afraid. She says these things in hopes of getting Macbeth to go through with the deed to prove his masculinity to her, because to her, murder is associated with masculinity, as she asks demons to
Oh,
get rid of her feminine qualities in order to carry out the murder, implying that women are not fit to be murderers. Lastly, Lady Macbeth compares herself, a ruthless female, to Macbeth, a lesser male, and says that she knows how tender 'tis to love that babe that milks her, and she would have dashed the brains out had she to sworn, as Macbeth has done to this. Act 1, Act 1 Scene 7, line 55 to 59. To paraphrase, she says that even though she knows what it is like to love a child, she would rather kill the child than break a promise. She attacks his pride by saying that she is a woman who knows what it is like to love a child, and when she would do where is it? Where am I? Oh, even though it's she would rather kill the child. She attacks his pride by saying that she is a woman who knows what it is like to love a child, and she would do all these horrible things to keep a promise. But Macbeth could not keep his own promise because he's too meek to kill the king, and he's a man. Similar to attacking Macbeth's weak ambitions, Lady Macbeth also attacks his masculinity by saying that he's less than a man if he does not go through with killing Duncan, and by comparing herself, who is only ruthless because of the unsexing done by the demons, to Macbeth, leading him to believe that he's weak, basically. With all that being said, one can conclude that Lady Macbeth of Shakespeare's Macbeth convinces Macbeth to kill Duncan by means of attacking his lack of ambitions as well as his manliness. Done.